There is a dangerous lie almost everyone grows up believing. It sounds innocent. It sounds noble. It sounds like the kind of truth that makes relationships feel safe. The lie is this: if someone earns your trust, they will protect it. But trust has never been a contract. It has never been insurance. It has never stopped someone from walking away, choosing someone else, or slowly becoming a stranger while still standing beside you. Some of the deepest betrayals in human history were committed by people who had already been trusted completely. That is why betrayal never begins with deception. It begins with certainty. The moment you become absolutely convinced that someone would never hurt you is often the moment you stop noticing all the quiet ways they already are. Trust changes the way your mind sees reality. It doesn't simply make you believe another person. It rewrites your perception of them. Their excuses become understandable. Their distance becomes temporary. Their inconsistencies become stress. Their silence becomes exhaustion. Their coldness becomes something you promise yourself will eventually disappear. Trust doesn't blind you because you're naive. It blinds you because your brain is trying to protect the emotional investment you've already made. Once you've built a picture of someone as safe, every contradiction feels more painful than changing the picture itself. So instead of questioning them, you question your own instincts. That is how trust quietly becomes self-deception. Most people imagine betrayal as a single dramatic moment. They picture a confession, an argument, or a final goodbye. But real betrayal is rarely loud. It is a slow psychological migration. Someone begins giving less while accepting the same amount from you. They become emotionally unavailable without ever announcing it. They stop feeling responsible for your emotional safety because they have unconsciously learned that you will continue trusting them anyway. Loyalty doesn't disappear overnight. It evaporates so gradually that you don't notice until you're standing in the emotional drought wondering where all the warmth went. This is why people often say they never saw it coming. They did see it. They simply translated every warning into something harmless because trust demanded that interpretation. Human beings don't see reality as it is. They see reality through the emotional agreements they've already made. Once trust becomes your lens, even obvious changes begin looking normal. You stop comparing today's version of someone with who they truly are. Instead, you compare them with who you hope they'll become again. Hope becomes stronger than observation. One of the strangest things about loyalty is that it cannot be produced by trust alone. Trust opens the door. Loyalty decides whether someone stays inside. Those are completely different psychological forces. A person can appreciate your trust while having no intention of protecting it forever. They can enjoy your consistency without feeling obligated to match it. They can accept your emotional security while secretly searching for emotional excitement somewhere else. Trust creates comfort. Loyalty requires character. Comfort is easy. Character is expensive. This explains why some people become less loyal the more you trust them. Not because trust is a weakness, but because familiarity changes human perception. The extraordinary slowly becomes ordinary. The effort that once impressed them becomes expected. The patience that once amazed them becomes invisible. Psychological adaptation affects relationships just as it affects everything else. Human beings normalize what they experience repeatedly. The heart has a frightening ability to stop appreciating what once felt impossible to lose. What was once cherished quietly becomes assumed. The tragedy is that the trusted person usually doesn't wake up one morning planning to betray anyone. Loyalty often dies through neglect before it dies through intention. People stop protecting what no longer feels fragile. They stop maintaining what they believe cannot leave. They begin investing their emotional energy elsewhere because the relationship at home feels permanently secured. Ironically, the trust that made the relationship stable also made it easier to ignore. Predictability can create peace, but it can also erase urgency. Psychologists have long observed that certainty reduces attention. The human brain naturally monitors uncertainty more carefully than stability. We inspect what might disappear. We overlook what seems guaranteed. This instinct helps people survive unpredictable environments, but inside relationships it creates a devastating paradox. The more guaranteed someone feels, the less consciously they are noticed. Appreciation slowly becomes background noise. Presence becomes invisible through repetition. The relationship doesn't collapse because of hatred. It collapses because certainty slowly replaced awareness. Perhaps you've noticed something unsettling. The people who feared losing you often seemed more emotionally engaged than the people who believed you would always stay. That isn't coincidence. Scarcity creates attention. Security often creates emotional laziness. The mind values what feels uncertain because uncertainty demands focus. This doesn't mean healthy relationships require constant fear. It means loyalty cannot survive on certainty alone. It survives through continual conscious choice. Every day someone remains loyal, they are choosing you again. Trust only made that choice possible. It never guaranteed they would keep making it. Another painful illusion is believing loyalty grows automatically over time. Time creates familiarity, not necessarily devotion. Two people can spend years together while emotionally drifting farther apart every month. Shared history can become a museum rather than a living connection. Memories cannot make decisions in the present. Yesterday's promises have no psychological power unless they continue being renewed through today's actions. People often stay emotionally attached to who someone used to be while ignoring who they have quietly become. This is why betrayal often feels impossible to explain. Nothing obvious happened at first. There wasn't one defining event. Instead, countless invisible moments accumulated beneath the surface. Conversations became shorter. Curiosity disappeared. Emotional generosity became transactional. Affection became routine instead of intentional. Little disappointments were dismissed because each one seemed too small to matter. But relationships are rarely destroyed by one massive fracture. They are weakened by thousands of microscopic cracks that eventually become impossible to carry. There is another uncomfortable truth hidden beneath loyalty. Some people remain loyal only while their needs are being fulfilled. Their commitment is conditional even if they never admit it. As long as they feel understood, admired, entertained, or emotionally satisfied, they appear deeply devoted. But once their internal experience changes, their definition of loyalty quietly changes with it. They don't think they're becoming disloyal. They simply begin prioritizing themselves while expecting you to continue prioritizing the relationship. Their emotional contract was never unconditional. It was simply invisible. Trust often makes this even harder to detect because trust encourages vulnerability. The more you trust someone, the more of yourself you reveal. You expose fears, weaknesses, dreams, regrets, childhood wounds, insecurities, and private hopes. You believe these pieces of yourself are being placed into safe hands. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they become emotional maps that someone no longer values but still possesses. That realization hurts more than losing the person. It feels as though parts of your identity were left inside someone who no longer protects them. Ironically, the people who value loyalty most are often the ones most vulnerable to betrayal. They assume others define commitment the same way they do. They project their own standards onto everyone around them. If they would never abandon someone they love, they unconsciously believe others think the same way. This is one of the most common cognitive errors in relationships. We mistake similarity for certainty. We assume shared affection automatically means shared values. It rarely does. Loyalty is not determined by feelings alone. Feelings fluctuate constantly. Loyalty is revealed by what someone chooses when their emotions change. Anyone can remain committed while everything feels exciting. The real test begins when novelty disappears, when admiration fades into routine, when temptation arrives wearing a convincing disguise, or when life becomes emotionally inconvenient. Character reveals itself most clearly when emotions stop providing easy motivation. That is where trust ends and loyalty begins. People also underestimate how much identity influences loyalty. Some individuals see themselves as people who keep promises regardless of circumstance. Others see promises as flexible depending on how they currently feel. Neither identity announces itself during the beginning of a relationship. Early affection hides these differences because both people are motivated by excitement. Only time exposes whether someone protects commitments or simply protects comfort. This is why betrayal often creates an identity crisis rather than simple heartbreak. You don't only lose another person. You lose confidence in your own judgment. You begin questioning every memory. Every conversation becomes evidence. Every compliment sounds suspicious in retrospect. Your mind desperately searches the past trying to identify the exact moment everything changed. But there usually isn't one. Loyalty rarely disappears like a light switch. It fades like daylight. So gradually that darkness only becomes obvious after the sun has already gone. The most haunting part is that people often continue trusting even after loyalty has quietly ended. They trust the version of someone stored in memory instead of the person standing before them. Memory becomes emotionally louder than reality. This explains why so many relationships survive months or even years after genuine commitment has already disappeared. One person is loving the past. The other is merely maintaining the appearance of the present. Perhaps the cruelest psychological truth is that betrayal rarely destroys trust itself. It changes where trust is placed. Before betrayal, trust lives inside another person. After betrayal, trust is forced back into your own perception. You begin realizing that every ignored instinct, every rationalized inconsistency, every uncomfortable feeling had been quietly trying to tell you something. The pain wasn't only caused by another person's choices. It was intensified by abandoning your own observations in order to preserve an emotional certainty. That realization changes everything. You stop seeing trust as proof of someone's goodness. You begin seeing it as a gift that requires continual protection from both people. You understand that loyalty is not owed because trust exists. It is earned repeatedly through choices that nobody applauds and almost nobody notices. The quiet moments matter more than the dramatic ones. The unseen decisions shape every relationship long before the visible ending arrives. In the end, almost everyone believes betrayal begins when loyalty disappears. But that isn't where it starts. It starts much earlier, in the silent moment when trust becomes so unquestioned that nobody feels responsible for protecting it anymore. One person assumes it can never be broken. The other assumes it will survive anything. Between those two assumptions, something fragile begins dying without making a sound. And maybe that is the lesson almost no one learns until it's too late. Trust is one of the most beautiful things two people can build together, but it has never been proof of what tomorrow will bring. It only reflects what exists today. Tomorrow still belongs to choice. Tomorrow still belongs to character. Tomorrow still belongs to the countless invisible decisions nobody else will ever witness. Because trust can open every door in the human heart. But only loyalty decides whether anyone is still standing there when the door is opened again.